Hi, today we're going to focus on isosceles triangles. So the first thing we want to do is review what does it mean to be an isosceles triangle. An isosceles triangle is a triangle with at least two congruent sides. A triangle with at least two congruent sides. So that means it can have more than two. All three sides could be the same, but we would really want to call that equilateral. But two of the sides have to be exactly the same. Okay? So what we're going to do is in this space right here, I'm going to construct an isosceles triangle right here in this space. Okay? I'm going to use a ruler so that I can make sure that my two side lengths are equal. I'm going to go ahead and go with 8 centimeters because I feel like that will fit. 8 centimeters. And then I'm going to do another 8 centimeters coming off this direction. I want to make sure that it's definitely not going to be isosceles, so I'm going to make it kind of obtuse-ish. Maybe it's almost right. It's a little obtuse. 8 centimeters. There we go. And then I'm just going to connect this at the bottom, and I actually ended up with about 12 centimeters down here on the bottom. So it's definitely isosceles and not equilateral. Okay, all right, there you go. You can see my isosceles triangle that I sketched. 8 centimeters, 8 centimeters, and 12 centimeters. Okay. On the triangle that we just drew, I'm going to label the following things. These are going to be some new vocabulary words that we want to make sure we know. Okay? The first vocabulary word we're going to look at is the word legs. And the legs are the congruent sides. So the two sides that I marked as 8, those are going to be the legs of the isosceles triangles. Probably, since it's only one, I didn't need the S there. Okay, so I have a leg and a leg. Your two congruent sides are the legs. Remember, your isosceles triangle can be spun around. Your legs are always going to be the two that are the same. Okay, so even if it's sitting, if this was a right triangle and it was sitting like this, my legs would still be the two sides that were the same length. Okay? The next vocabulary is going to be the base, and the base is the third side, which most of the time is not going to have the same length as the other two unless your triangle is also equilateral. So this one that's not my 8 centimeters, this is going to be my base. Okay, this side right here is my base. All right, the next word that's a new word for us, we know vertex and we know angle, but the vertex angle of an isosceles triangle is the angle where the congruent sides meet. So I've got 3 angles. My congruent sides both meet here at the top. And again, it's not always at the top, right? If my figure had been turned around, then my vertex angle would be on the bottom left, right? So it's not always at the top, your vertex angle. It's just where your two legs meet. So this angle right here is my vertex angle. Okay, so that's my vertex angle. All right, and then the next thing we're going to label are my base angles, and those are the angles that are on either side of the base. So this down here was my base. So that means I'm going to have one base angle right here. And I'm going to have another base angle right here. Okay, so I've got my two legs. I need to be able to identify. I have my base. My vertex angle is across from the base. And then my two base angles. Okay, so that's new vocabulary we need to make sure we can identify on every isosceles triangle. Okay, number 4 wants me to use my protractor to measure the two base angles. And then we'll see what we notice. Okay, all right, so I'm going to measure my first base angle. I'm going to line up the center of my protractor with this corner right here. And then, I don't know if y'all can see that, but my orange line comes right out and it hits at 40 and it hits at 140. Okay, so it hits at 40 and it hits at 140. So which angle is this? Is it 40 or is it 140? So when I look out, I go to where the 0 is. My 0 is on this inside set of numbers, not the outside, but the inside. So I go with the inside set. We are at 40 degrees. So this angle right here is 40 degrees. Okay, now let's measure the other side. So I'm going to take the center and I'm going to put it right on that vertex, and then I'm going to rotate it around so that it's nice and lined up. Okay, there we go. All right, once I have it lined up, when I look out, oops, I kind of slid. When I line up myself up, I look out and I can see I'm at the 140 and I'm at the 40. So last time we used the inside numbers, 140, but let's look over here. When I come out, my number here starts at 180, 170, 160. So those aren't the ones I want. I want the 0. 0, 10, 20, 30, 40. So this angle is also 40 degrees. Okay. Now, it didn't ask me to find the vertex angle, but I can figure it out without even having to measure, right? Because if I have 40 here and I have 40 here, that's going to be 80 degrees. So 80 from 180, because the three angles have to make 180. This one should be 100 degrees. So let's see how close we got to being 100 degrees. So when I line up, right here at 100 degrees, okay, comes right out at 100. So that works out. This is my vertex angle is 100 degrees, which I wouldn't have had to have measured because since I knew these were both 40 and together they all have to make 180, I knew that would be 100 and together 180 degrees. Okay? So it says we've used the protractor to measure the two base angles of the triangle, and we noticed, let's see, what do we notice about the two base angles? They are both 40 degrees. Okay, they are both 40 degrees. Okay, so they're both exactly the same. What do we think when I look at number 5? What do I think that means about the base angles in isosceles triangles? Okay, well, let's see. My base angles of my isosceles triangle, since it always opens up to the same length, they're always going to be the same measure. So the base angles of an isosceles triangle will always be congruent. Okay? The base angles in an isosceles triangle will always be congruent, which means they'll always have equal measures. Okay? All right, so in the next video, we're going to go ahead and look at some examples of how we can use this information of knowing that I'm going to have two legs that are exactly equal to each other. I'm going to have two base angles that are exactly equal to each other, and I know these three angles together always will add to 180 degrees. Okay, so in the next video, we'll look at some examples, finding leg lengths, and finding base and vertex angles. All right, thank you so much for watching.